I think the benefit of the revenue goal is actually not the money that you end up with. What it helps you do is clarify your own thinking about what you want to do. And for some reason, when we attach numbers to those things, it becomes a tool to help us gauge our own confidence in an idea, in a project. Revenue goals just end up being this very nice kind of guidepost in a business that helps us stay pointed in the direction that we want to be going.
Welcome to Marketing and Mindset for Wellness Coaches, the podcast for health coaches and wellness entrepreneurs just like you who are building a business, making the world a healthier place, and designing a first-class life. I'm your host, Kim Foster, MD and certified business coach, and I'm on a mission to help you up-level your strategy and raise your mindset so you can truly thrive and grow your business. Let's get started. Let's talk about setting revenue goals for your business. Now, when I say this, are you breaking out in a sweat or throwing your arms up in the air and saying, sure, that sounds great, Kim, but how on earth am I supposed to set a revenue goal? Do I just pick a number out of the air? Do I set a realistic goal, or do I set a crazy stretch goal? What's the best way to go? And if you're having any of those thoughts and questions, then just know that you are in good company. Most of the coaches I work with and the people in my community really do struggle to pinpoint their revenue goals. Many people are reluctant to draw a line in the sand and state their goal. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And really, they end up procrastinating on the whole project as a result. But in this episode that you're listening to right now, you're going to learn the incredible importance of setting revenue goals for your business, the power in this, and why this is a step that you really can't afford to skip. My guest today is Mark Butler, who is the founder of the accounting startup Let's Do the Books, as well as the bookkeeper, CFO, and confidant to top online entrepreneurs like Brooke Castillo. That's right, dear listeners. You are about to hear me pick the brain of the man who handles the financials of Brooke Castillo's multi-million-dollar coaching empire. Now, before working in finance, Mark co-founded 3 online businesses that brought in close to $2 million in total revenue. And today, Mark combines his business savvy with his certification in life coaching to help business owners take control of their finances and work through the shame and anxiety that almost always comes up when dealing with money. So, like I said, you're going to learn the power behind setting revenue goals for your business and how to do it. And also, and this is important, at the same time, Mark and I talk in detail about how to practice a healthy detachment from the numbers, how to not get caught up in the numbers for numbers' sake, as an abstract notion, but instead how to really dig in and unpack what those numbers mean for you and why that is actually the more important thing to focus on. So I think you're going to absolutely love this conversation. I know that I did. And I want to make sure that you stay to the end because I have an announcement to make that I'm so excited about. And what I've got to share with you is definitely something that can help you reach your revenue goals, no matter what they are, in record time and with a lot more ease than you ever thought possible. So you're definitely going to want to stick with this episode all the way to the end to hear all the details. So without further ado, let's dive in. Well, hey, Mark, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, I am so looking forward to this conversation. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. However, before we get into everything, I would love for you to just tell us a bit more about your story. I'm curious about the journey that, brought you to where you are now.
So in around 2005, I started my first online business. And between 2005 and 2013, I owned several different online businesses. Some worked better than others. Across all the businesses, there was a couple $1 million in total revenue generated. And so it worked well enough. It paid the bills and it was fun. But I always had this sort of stress and anxiety associated with the money. And I never felt like I was good at the financial aspects of my business. And I never felt like I was good at managing my finances in my personal life. So when I sold my businesses in late 2012, I sold them for just enough money that it was like a very fun month, but it wasn't an amount of money that let me say, okay, I'm done, or I'm going to take a year off or 2 years off. It was like it was like one big paycheck kind of when I sold these businesses. So I needed to get a job, and I landed with my very good friend, my very good friend's company. His name is Jesse Meekum, and he owns a company called You Need a Budget, which a lot of people refer to as YNAB. And it's a personal budgeting company that has a specific philosophy and software that they use to help people manage their money and make progress in their finances. So I went to work for him, and that was my opportunity to figure myself out with my finances. And after about a year of working there, I asked him if he would be up for me starting sort of a coaching and consulting thing inside of the company where we gave You Need a Budget customers more hands-on support in implementing the philosophy of the software that we used. And he let me do that. So that's really where my business was born. It was born inside of You Need a Budget, the company. And I started to get clients inside that company. But after about 6 or 8 months, he came to me and said, what you're doing is working well. It's paying its way, meaning it's paying for you. It's a break-even sort of project, but we're not really a coaching company. We're a software company. So let's wind down the consulting and coaching thing you're doing, and we'll have you be sort of our small business evangelist, which I thought was wise on his part. They have a great thing going with their software, of course, but I really liked what I was doing. So I asked him if he would let me buy my clients from him and go on my own. And he was supportive of that. And so in late 2014, I became independent again. And that's sort of where my journey as a financial coach and a bookkeeper and a CFO started.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, very cool. So, yeah, so let's talk about money then. I'd love to start with the idea of setting revenue goals. I suspect that most entrepreneurs are just not great at setting actual income goals, and I'm sure that there are lots of reasons for that. But can you talk to me about why it's important to set revenue goals?
I think there are benefits to setting revenue goals. I think the benefit of the revenue goal is actually not the revenue itself. It's not the money that you end up with, but what it helps you do is clarify your own thinking about what you want to do. And for some reason, when we attach numbers to those things, they become easier to wrap our heads around, meaning either easier to believe in and pursue, or when we set certain revenue goals, we realize that we don't have the belief, we don't have the confidence to pursue what it is we're pursuing. So it becomes a nice, it becomes a tool to help us gauge our own confidence in an idea, in a project, and it points us in a direction. So I'm not a person that either in my own business or in my clients' businesses where we set the revenue goal and then we're sort of constantly checking in on progress toward the goal. I use revenue goals more as guideposts where you set the goal and then that becomes the thing that you periodically look and very periodically, not meaning not that often, you look over at that goal again and say, oh, are we sort of still moving in that general direction, or are we not actually moving in that direction? And if we're not, then what's going on to be in our way? And if we are, then great. What's working well? How do we do more of it? Revenue goals just end up being this very nice kind of guidepost in a business that helps us stay pointed in the direction that we want to be going.
Okay, that's good. I like that. I like thinking of it like a guidepost. So when you say periodically, though, like how, I mean, I'm sure that it depends. Maybe that's going to be your answer, but how often are you talking about like periodically checking in with your revenue goals to make sure that you're on track?
For me personally, it's about yearly.
Mm.
Maybe I sort of I'll at the beginning of the year I'll kind of think, oh, it'd be cool this year to do XYZ in revenue, and then no, that's not true. Not yearly. So when I'm sort of doing my own bookkeeping in my own business, when I'm checking in with my numbers, I will reference, oh, where am I relative to where I thought I would be, and it becomes kind of a passing and almost a casual review. With my clients, it really depends on their DNA and on what sort of drives them. I have some clients who don't particularly care, meaning it doesn't really change their state of mind if they're quote on track or off track. Other clients are very much driven by progress toward the goal. So we talk about it every month and we say, okay, this many dollars to go and what's the plan for achieving it? It really depends on how important the goal itself is to the client. For some clients, we use it as the guidepost and we say, oh yeah, that would be exciting. And then we don't really talk about it much after that. For other clients, it's kind of everything.
Mm. Okay, that's great. So, I mean, it's flexible. It really depends on the person, the kind of business that they're growing, the way that they work best. Like, there's no one set way that you think or that you found works best for people.
That's my opinion. Something that I can say that I disagree with is if we treat a specific process, a goal setting process, or if we treat a specific mindset about goal setting as sacred and sort of like, if you're going to be in business, this is how you have to think about revenue and about revenue goals. I don't think that sets us up for success. I think different things motivate different people. And our job is actually to find what keeps us excited and then to give energy to that. For some people, that's revenue goals and checking in on them in a very specific way. For other people, they don't ever need the revenue goal to stay focused and to stay enthusiastic in their work.
That's so interesting. And I mean, I feel like that kind of principle can apply just in general to building a business and entrepreneurship is that I mean, this is my philosophy, is that there's no absolute one right or only way to do things because we're all different and have different, ways of working and different preferences and strengths and all of those kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because businesses have profit and loss statements and typically we're in a business, at least, well, not even always, but many of us are in a business because it's what pays for our family's life, our family's consumption.
Mm-hmm.
So the money is always a factor in the business, but it doesn't have to be. I think sometimes the easiness of tracking money allows it to be too prominent in our minds and in our discussions about our businesses when there are lots of things that are harder to track and less easy to compare that get swept aside, even though those things are as big a factor and often a bigger factor in how we feel about our work, how we enjoy our work, and the work we choose to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. So let's say that somebody, they've set their revenue goals. They've set, what they would like to achieve. So what then? Like, how does somebody go about? And what would you say in terms of how to actually create a plan to reach those goals?
So this is what's really interesting, Kim, and I appreciate the question because over the years, as the money guy, the CFO, the bookkeeper, people will ask me that sort of question, which I think is a spot on question. And it's been interesting to have the opportunity to say, actually, that's not really a money question. It's a marketing question.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So very, very often people will say, I've got to figure out my money. I've got to get my money dialed in. I've got to get my budgeting or my forecasts all organized. And I've got to have a system for checking in on those. And I say, sure, absolutely. I have a service that can do that for you. But when I actually dig in with the person and say, when we talk about your revenue plans, what are we actually talking about? Well, we're talking about the offer you're making, meaning what are you going to deliver and how much are you going to charge for it? We're talking about your plan for getting people to that offer and then for converting people to that offer once they've seen it, right? Those are marketing and sales questions.
Mm-hmm.
So the money work that your average bookkeeper or CFO do, it's mostly, I shouldn't say it's mostly backward looking. If you're working with a certain type of CFO, then there is good budgeting and forecasting happening. But in terms of what actually creates the revenue, what actually brings the money in, those are marketing and sales questions, not money questions. So I've very often over the last 7 years, when people come to me and say, I'm having issues with my money, I've got to get my money figured out. I don't have to interview them for very long before I say, you actually don't have a money issue. You have a marketing and sales issue. If you solve your marketing and sales issue, the money issue takes care of itself pretty easily.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So then let's say, somebody in this, like what you were just describing, they've set their goals and then they're checking periodically as we were describing. But what to do when they realize that they aren't actually hitting those financial targets? Like, how do you figure out, or is this something that you can help people figure out? Is it that their target was wrong, that their goals were unrealistic, or they need to go back to the drawing board and work on their sales and marketing? Or like, tell me a little bit about how to help people when they are feeling that maybe rising sense of anxiety, like, okay, well, that was my goal and I'm nowhere near it.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about this. So I'll try not to ramble. One of the biggest pieces here is the psychological piece of how you approach goals in the first place. If you have chosen the goal and then decided to measure your happiness and sense of success according to that goal, then you actually set yourself up to always be discouraged in your business. Because what actually happens there is if I use a goal to determine my worth and my happiness, then 99.9% of the time, I do not get to feel successful and accomplished because 99.9% of the time I'm in pursuit of a goal. And then the day arrives where I've achieved the goal, and that moment is fleeting. Oh, look, I achieved my goal. But then we immediately go back to setting another goal. Oh, it's time to level up. It's time to go to a new goal. And now we're back into not experiencing the success because the goal is success. So this is the psychological piece here is really interesting because when people say to me, well, what happens when I'm off track from my goal? My question is, well, what does your goal mean to you? If your goal means to you that you're a successful, valuable human being, then you're going to have a hard time. If your goal is a guidepost, if your goal is a way for you to check in on whether your assumptions and plans that you made about your marketing and sales processes, to check in on whether or not they're actually doing what you thought they would do, then that's great. And then at that point, we can say, oh, the math is not adding up the way I thought it would. Then we go into the marketing and sales processes and say, well, where's the breakdown? Which one of my assumptions, the assumptions that built this goal, which of these assumptions actually aren't holding true? And then how do I change those assumptions? That's when goal setting can be very useful and productive. That's why if I'm talking to a business owner, I have to say, well, first let's find out what the goal means to you and how you're using it. Then we'll figure out how to adapt. If I'm working with somebody who I think has a very healthy mindset about themselves and about their goals, then when we notice that they are off track, meaning when the math is not what they thought the math would be, then we can have a totally dispassionate, strategic conversation about adjusting the plan. If the goal was a proxy for their value as a human being, then we don't need to talk about their marketing and sales processes. We have to talk about their sort of inner compass first.
That's so important, really. I mean, it's a lot of what you just said, is like detaching from the outcome and not depending on a particular outcome for, as validation that you're successful or that you're happy or, any of those kinds of pieces. But like having that a certain, like you said, dispassionate, like a detachment from the outcome. That also makes me think of like the arrival fallacy, right? Like we assume that when we start to think, oh, I'll be happy when,
That's right.
When this happens, then I'll feel successful. And it's a trap because you get that, just like you said, like get there and you're like, oh, okay, well, I've achieved that. Now I need to, that didn't actually make me happy. Now I need to achieve the next thing. So you're constantly chasing after that next thing. So I love that, like to separate those things out and really just separate out the math. Like, were the assumptions correct? Was the goal based on reality? So actually, I'd love to know a little bit more about, like, just to back up a bit, what is a good way to actually set a revenue goal? I think that a lot of people just kind of pull numbers out of the air, like, oh, I'd like to have a 6-figure year or 5K month or, whatever it is. So talk to me a little bit about that.
I think goals are useful. The way you set goals can and maybe should depend on your personality. So there are some people who set goals that they call, like stretch goals or even impossible goals. And for some people, those are very powerful because it's extremely inspirational and motivational, which is actually a goal's main purpose.
Mm.
There are some people who, when they set a goal that feels impossible, it completely demotivates them. So that if the goal is too far out there, it doesn't inspire them to take any new action. In fact, it does the opposite, and they actually reduce the amount of action they're taking. So if I'm working with a client, or if I'm encouraging someone to go on a goal setting exercise, I'm going to say, well, what excites you? Because there are some people who say, I made 100,000 last year. It would feel amazing to make 110,000 this year, and that's a 10% increase. But then they doubt themselves because they say, well, but in my mastermind or with my business coach, they want me to set a goal to triple, not increase 10%. They want me to increase 200% or 300%. Well, how do you feel when you try to set that kind of goal? I feel dread. I feel anxiety. I feel fear. Okay, well, would you like to feel that fear as a personal development exercise? Sometimes it can be productive for us to hang out in some fear for a while. Would you like to do that? Or how do you want to approach this? Well, I find that fear debilitating. So no, I don't want to feel that. Okay, great. Let's set a different goal then. One that feels just uncomfortable enough that you don't feel like you can sit back and do nothing, but it doesn't feel so big that you just shut down. And I if I'm talking to clients, I can change. I'm equally happy with either approach. Some people, though, I'm going to make $11 million this year. Okay, great. And they've never made any money, but they're so excited about that vision that they're willing to go chase it. Other people just need to make those small incremental improvements, and that keeps them excited. So I think it just goes back to people figuring out what way works best for them, and then allowing a certain level of discomfort, and then going forward.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to know yourself, right? You have to know if you're motivated by those big, hairy, like stretch goals, or if that's just completely defeating and overwhelming and just is never going to like keep you, you're just going to pull yourself out of the game. So yeah, I agree. It's so important to know yourself in that way. I'd be interested to know, I think that, scarcity mindset, like when it comes to money, especially, obviously, it's just something that so many people struggle with. Is that something that you, encounter a lot in your work with clients? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, scarcity mindset is something I get asked about a lot because I am a coach and I work with a lot of coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm working with someone who says, I hear one of two things from them. Either I have a scarcity mindset or I wish I were more abundant in my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I want to make sure that when they use those words, they are more than just buzzwords for them. So I like to say, look, if I didn't let you say scarcity mindset, if we just decided that wasn't going to be part of our conversation, give me some words or sentences that would describe the feeling you're having. And then I find that we actually get some work done because I hear things like, oh, well, I'm scared. Like I'm fearful. Oh, okay. That I can work with.
Mm-hmm.
Or and actually, that's actually what it is most of the time. So when they say I have a scarcity mindset and you dig in, you find out that they're actually just scared. So it's not really, and this is my opinion, Kim, and I'm happy to have it challenged by others because I think there are a lot of great coaches out there with a lot of different perspectives. When I ask people, tell me about this scarcity mindset, they will very often tell me a story of a coach they admire or somebody they follow on Instagram, and that person is very consistent in describing their abundance mindset. So they say, the person they're talking about is like, oh, she's so abundant. Well, how do you know she's abundant? Well, because she says she is. Well, okay, but what does it mean? What is your experience of her that tells you that she's got this abundance mindset? And when I start to dig in, they can't really answer those questions because their experience of that person who's claiming abundance is a social media feed or a newsletter or a webinar. It's curated content in which the person is constantly talking about their abundance mindset, but they're not ever really giving the person clarity about what that means. They're just showing that as contrast to this other thing called scarcity mindset. But when I press on either of those, like when I try to poke and press at either of those topics, they tend to kind of disintegrate. And what's left is, well, okay, so if I don't let you say scarcity, then what would you say instead? And they'll say, well, fear, envy, and lack of confidence in myself. Like, oh, okay, well, let's take each of those individually and work on those and see what's left. I do the same thing with abundance, by the way. When someone says, I want to be more abundant, I say, okay, cool. If I don't let you say you want to be more abundant, what are you going to say instead to communicate the same thing to me? They say, oh, I want to feel confidence. I want to feel peace. I want to feel generous. These are the things I want to feel. Okay, great. I can work with all of those too. But I don't know what to do with these broad headings of scarcity and abundance because they seem to me, I hate to say it, but they seem to me like buzzwords that we just sort of kind of throw at each other. And I haven't ever known what they mean. But if someone says, I'd like to feel more peaceful about money, and I say, okay, great. I can do that. Let's work on it.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, for definitely, there's a lot of people, I think, who use those words and don't necessarily know what they mean, because I think they're kind of like, they're very popular words to use, and they end up being kind of placeholders that are stripped of meaning. And to your point about, like, when you're looking at somebody on social media, like their feed, and feeling that, and getting the feeling that that represents their mindset. Of course it doesn't. I mean, mindset by definition is an internal thing. It's not something that you can assess somebody's mindset from their external world. Only an individual knows what their true mindset is. So I think that that's just such an important, like, centering and grounding point to make with people, so that we don't all spin out into feeling like we're supposed to have this particular mindset that's being represented on Instagram.
Yeah, I think, by the way, I just sort of getting ready for our call, I was listening to one of your early episodes about transforming your beliefs about money, and you tell this great story about upgrading to business class. Love the story. And that's a story where I could imagine a client coming to me and saying, I'm really struggling with scarcity. And I could say, well, I could either meet them there and say, okay, then let's work on abundance. Or I could dig just one level and say, can you tell me why you're saying that? It has been my experience that they will then tell me a story similar to your story about upgrading to business class. They'll say, well, I have a scarcity issue. Well, tell me how you know you have a scarcity issue. Well, I had an opportunity to upgrade to business class and I didn't. And that's because of this thing called scarcity. And that's when I say, well, if I didn't let you call that scarcity, give me another explanation for why you didn't upgrade to business class. And then we get to the truth. And in your case, I loved, you talked about identity, and I thought it was very useful and powerful. Someone else might have said, well, the truth is, it's just, I'm just afraid that if I upgrade to business class, I'm going to run out of money. And then I say, okay, well, then let's work on that. We don't have to label that scarcity. We can just work on the fear you're feeling. And then we get work done. So I wanted to use you as the example because you gave a great example of where people would bail themselves out by applying some big label to themselves, but you didn't. You said, oh, I actually uncovered some interesting things about my identity and I worked on those. And then that led to sort of a breakthrough. I loved that. And I think it's a great example.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's like when you say using labels, I think that is, perhaps part of the issue. A big part of the issue here is that when we use that label, scarcity or abundance, it feels like, okay, that's the whole story. That's all you need to know. And it sort of stops the conversation unless there's somebody like you probing and saying, well, what does that actually mean to you? Like, give me more than just that label. Like, let's peel back the layers there, because, and that's of course the danger of just labeling things a certain way.
So can I, and I'm going to let you move on. I want to let you guide us here, but can I give you one little opinion here about the
Absolutely.
scarcity and abundance thing?
Definitely.
In the online world, this is an opinion. People should email me and tell me I'm wrong. I'm totally ready for that. I think we use scarcity and abundance as an in crowd and an out crowd.
Mm, yeah.
I think all of us, we're very susceptible to that as humans. And so if someone says, I want to be abundant, I think very often they're saying, I want to belong to a specific crowd that has self-labeled as abundant.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, and then that goes back to that really core human need to belong, right? Like
Yes.
we want to belong. We want to feel like we're part of the like you said, the in crowd, and certainly people who are representing, as we said, like that abundance mindset, they do come across as being part of the in crowd, and so you want to be a part of that. And it might have nothing to do with your actual mindset about money or how you're conducting yourself in your life or business. It's more about the label.
That's one of my hypotheses. Yes.
Very interesting food for thought for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm actually really curious as we've been talking, like we've touched on a little bit on like some of the clients that like, what kind of clients do you actually work with? Like how, because it feels like your work is more than, of course, just like, doing the books and money. Like it's a very holistic approach. It seems that you take with your clients. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're catching me kind of in the middle of an evolution too. So one business I have that I love is a business called Let's Do the Books. It's a bookkeeping business for coaches and online business owners, and it's just kind of straight bookkeeping. It counts the money and puts it into nice reports for you so that at tax time you've got what you need to, not stress and have the T's crossed and the I's dotted. So, and my team takes care of that business and love it. We do a great job with that. I'm doing more and more coaching, whether you call it life coaching, business coaching. I have historically been a CFO for 7 and sometimes 8-figure coaching businesses where it's my job to manage the cash flow and to advise the business owner on strategy. And what I noticed over the years is that I was spending almost equal time working on mindset and helping her think through her thoughts and feelings and making sure she stays clear and confident as she deals with the numbers and with her team and her goals, etc. So that's more how I'm spending my time these days. I'm a coach who's very, very at home in the numbers, but as comfortable in talking about the thoughts and the emotions associated with the business and with the business owner.
That's amazing. So are you building up like a separate business, like a separate brand, or is this under the umbrella of your current business? Where is that going?
I'm already doing it. So it's kind of, one of the beautiful things about coaching businesses, as you of course know, is that they often grow kind of behind the scenes where through word of mouth and through just conversations and connections, you start to get clients and then then referrals come. So it's actually already happening. MarkButler.com is where I'll probably represent myself online as the coach. So Let's Do the Books.com will continue to exist as the bookkeeping service, and MarkButler.com is where people can engage with me as a coach and as an advisor.
Nice. Okay, that sounds great. It really certainly sounds like this is all coming about like really nice marriage of the things that you are skilled at and passionate about. And so it must be fun for you to be following down the rabbit hole and really like stepping into more of the work that you want to do.
It is amazing. And I know you know this because of the business that you're running, but coaching is just it's just an unbelievable business. You get to connect with people, you get to have amazing conversations, you get to be of great service, and you get to make an amazing amount of money doing it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, final question before we wrap up. What is your, do you have a top piece of advice, like something that a listener can, walk away from this episode with? If you were going to give, somebody maybe if it was just one mindset shift or just one thing to do next, what would you say that would be?
That's a great question. I think it's hard. So I know cliches are okay. It's hard to give an answer that doesn't sound cliched.
Yes, I know. It's kind of a big question. So yes,
But I
appreciate
appreciate the
it.
question. I think these are great questions to help us sort of recenter ourselves. Um, as the money guy, I want to say this as the money guy. I would encourage people to develop a true understanding of what role the money is playing in their life and their business, and to make sure they like that role. Meaning, is money occupying a space in my brain that is healthy and contributes to my happiness and my sense of flow and accomplishment? Or is money occupying a space in my brain that contributes to a sense of lack and deficiency and self-criticism and feeling behind? Because the money, you alluded to this earlier about the arrival fallacy. I can't ever write this book, but if I could ever write this book, it will be filled with stories that prove that point, of people who thought that arriving at a certain amount of money would give them a specific feeling, and it does not. So the money cannot be the thing that we're chasing if what we actually want is satisfaction, connection, creativity, enjoyment. Money just doesn't do that in the way that we all think it will, even though people keep telling us it won't, but we're like, but I think it will. I hear what you're saying, but I think it will. Take it from the guy who's dealt with numbers that go from like $0 up to $25 million. The money cannot do that. It does not do that.
I love that. That's a fabulous answer, especially coming from, like you said, the money guy. So I love that. That's just perfect. Okay. Well, before I let you go, Mark, I'd love for you to just tell people where they can go, to connect with you and learn more about you.
Yeah. markbutler.com and letsdothebooks.com. If they want to connect with me on social media, I am on Instagram at markbutler.com with the dot spelled out. Mark Butler, DOT.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been terrific. Wonderful conversation. And thank you for being such a great guest, Mark, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you for being such a great host and letting me share my thoughts.
All right, there you have it. I hope that you enjoyed listening into my conversation with Mark, and I hope it helped you to understand the incredible power of your mindset when it comes to revenue goals, plus the importance of being in clarity around your money and your financials. So, assuming that you're now well on your way to setting an empowered revenue goal for your business, what you may need next is a vehicle to actually get you there. And that is exactly what I've created. So, if you've listened to my last few podcast episodes or you're on my mailing list, you've probably heard me talk about the Done For You coaching program that I've been creating behind the scenes. And I'm now super excited to announce that it is ready and available for purchase. Having a premium program is the best way to scale up from a single session coaching model, and it also supports you to raise your rates. And a program with a defined outcome is actually easier to sell to your community because it contains benefits that you can clearly describe and that your potential clients will actually want. But that said, many coaches really struggle to do this because they don't have the time to do all the research and writing and designing that's required to put together a really fabulous signature program. And many coaches aren't really sure how to build a program from scratch. They don't know what to include and how to make everything come together. To which I want to say, I've got you. What my team and I have created, like I say, is a completely done-for-you 90-day wellness coaching program. You can use it totally out of the box or customize it as much as you like, and it will allow you to skip over all the months of blood, sweat, and tears it would take you to create your own program from scratch. And instead, you'll just have this business asset in your hands immediately, empowering you to enroll more clients and make more money. Basically, this is everything you need need to sell and market and confidently deliver a premium wellness program to your clients. So if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and check out the details in the show notes and be sure to act fast because I am offering an early bird savings, but for a limited time. Okay, that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for joining me and spending a little time with me today. Again, I hope you enjoyed my fantastic conversation with Mark Butler. It was just such a pleasure to speak with him. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode, actually. So hop on to Instagram and let me know, and let Mark know too, what your big takeaways were from this particular episode. All right, have an amazing day, and I will talk to you again next week. Thanks so much for listening. If you are ready to build a coaching business that gives you freedom and flexibility and allows you to make a meaningful impact in the world, but you're not really sure how to get started or what you need to do to attract the perfect clients and grow your income, then let me be your coach. I would love to teach you my exact framework, my proven method for how I created a freedom-based business for myself and how I've helped dozens of clients do the same thing and create a life that is better than their dreams. Get started by heading over to drkimfoster.com/business training, and there you can sign up for my free online training called The 4-Part Formula for Replacing Your 9-to-5 Income with a Coaching Business You Love.